Roll up, roll up. Welcome, Popcorn Gremlins, to our debut episode. Charlie, how are you feeling? This is our first venture into the podcast world.
Well, now you're cranking up the pressure. But now that I've rolled up, I am feeling excited, nervous, but in a good way. But overall, this is a great day for us. It's our debut premiere maiden outing as podcasting Gremlins.
Question is, can you still hear those lambs screaming in the night with your cheap bag and your good shoes?
Oh, yes, I can, and always will.
Stu using their Evian skin cream?
Okay, it's too many references from Science to Life. Sorry about that.
You're going to hear that a lot, guys. It is without doubt one of my top 5 favourite films.
It's in your top 3. It's in your top 1 movies.
I know it's now at the point where I could probably list off all of the script.
Yeah, although that was a controversial statement. I do rescind that. No one has a top 1 movie. We'll talk about that another day. We have been to the pictures. We've been to the movies. We've sat at home and streamed. What are we talking about today in episode 1?
Well, before we get into that, just quickly, I just want to remind everybody that every week we're going to be bringing you our thoughts, our views on 2 movies. One of the movies, which we'll always start off with, is going to be a movie that's out in the cinema. And the other one is going to be, one of our favourites. We're going to look back into the archives and bring you some of our most beloved cinematic moments.
So you could say 1 new movie, 1 old movie.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to keep it simple, but, I'm that kind of salty gremlin that likes to talk.
2 Gremlins, 2 movies. That simple.
Let's begin.
Okay, so it's Black Widow, isn't it?
Yep, the film has split the fandom both off and on screen. It's very controversial.
And am I the one to deliver the synopsis?
This week, I charge you to give a detailed breakdown as to the plot of Black Widow, please.
Thank you.
Go.
Thank you for allowing me the space to do that. Deep breath, everyone. Black Widow takes place in 2016, which is shortly after the events of Captain America Civil War, as I'm sure you know. Natasha Romanoff, our widowy protagonist, is on the run, having upset various people, and her younger sister, Yelena Belova, is on the assassin path too, but in a different direction. That is until, and bear with me here, she has some mystery red gas sprayed into her face while she's on a job, and hey presto, her brainwashing is reversed, and she goes on the run away from her employers. Sooner or later, the sisters reunite, and so does their covert family, which was broken up in 1994 and set up at the start of the movie. It's Red Guardian and Rachel Weisz Black Widow as the de facto fake parents who start to make up for their past as the story develops. We also have Ray Winston as the head of the Red Room, which is the institution that trains up the lethal Black Widows, or the army of them.
Which, can I just put a pause on there?
Yes,
Sorry to interrupt,
yes.
Just moments in. I believe the Red Room here is a nod to the famous book and movie Red Sparrow, which is all about a secret school in Russia where they groom and nurture young kids to grow up and be spies and assassins.
I believe it is. And
Please continue.
Not because it sounds a bit like Red Rum, which is the reverse of murder, which is what one of us thought was the case. Let's never say which one of us that was.
It wasn't me. Something was murdered. It was the movie.
Anyway, Red Room trains up the lethal Black Widows, and Ray Winston heads them up, and his daughter was blown up by Romanoff. And boy, does Ray have some evil plans up his sleeve. All of these players are on the hunt, or they're being chased down. Sometimes it's a bit of both. And the final showdown is a sky-high affair featuring an army of Black Widows, some very creaky Russian accents, and plenty of familial loyalty coming out to play. And we will leave it at that because we don't want to give away absolutely everything. So now that I've synopsized, how about you opine?
Yeah, we'll go with that. Please do write in and tell me what that word means. So, yeah, you mentioned Yelena in your synopsis, and that's where I want to start, really. I mean, she was the complete star of the film for me, that character.
Yeah.
Played by Florence Pugh from Midsommar. I mean, there was just so much humour and character and comedy and charm oozing out of her. And for me, she really did kind of save the film. I loved the 90s references at the end of the film. She's wearing this very kind of Cher Horowitz of Clueless fame outfit. She took the mick out of her sister for her famous landing,
which
we'll get onto a little bit later. But yeah, she was the standout for me. And just on the 90s reference front, I believe, I haven't rewatched the film, but I believe there was a cover in there of Nirvana's Smells Like Teenage Spirit, which is sacrilegious.
So is calling that song Smells Like Teenage Spirit when it smells like Teen Spirit?
I've done it again. Okay, well, it's our first podcast, guys. Hopefully it's the first of
Fair
many
enough.
kind
No,
of...
yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. There's something about her that is, dare I say it, quite normal. She looks like someone you might know. She looks like a real person and not like a movie star. And in that sense is really, really convincing. But she does still have that star quality. She commands the screen when she's on. I think she ends up being the star of the piece, really.
Well, I think that's a deliberate attempt by Marvel to appeal to Gen Z, to a new generation. I mean, the character doesn't adhere to a lot of the female superhero tropes. She has, kind of closer to normal size physique. She's not necessarily, classed in those kind of standards of Hollywood beauty. And I think it's fantastic. I think it's a great move forward. And I think her humour added to that sense that she is appealing to a younger fan base.
Yeah, she's so watchable.
Onto the Russia versus America, kind of, which was essentially, it was part of the foundations of the film, right? It was, for me, it was very boring. The Cold War ended in 1992. I think.
Did it ever really end?
I think this is, it's this trope that Hollywood continues to push is very dated. I'm a little bit over it. The Russian accents. Please stop getting Americans to play Russians. There are millions of Russian or millions of Russians in the world. I'm sure there's a very large percentage of those that are actors. I'm sure there's a large percentage of those actors that would be willing to perform in Hollywood movies. Yeah, let's just stop it, guys.
It was a bit Pierce Brosnan era Bond with the kind of Russian lady villains.
Yes, they were all very close to having that tall, blonde Russian villain that was always in all of the Die Hard movies.
Yeah, that's the one.
So I mentioned earlier about Black Widow and her landing. For me, the inconsistency, and I'm talking from a completely gremlin nerd point of view here, guys, but the inconsistency with her abilities drives me insane. How can she jump from a huge building and be absolutely fine, and then she gets punched in the face by her sister and she gets a bloody nose? I don't get it. Is she Captain Marvel one day and then she's just a bog standard Jodie Comer, all about killing Eve Assassin on the other? I just don't get it, guys. It's confusing. Please message us on Instagram if you have any intel as to where do her powers come from. What are they?
What are her powers? Even I, as a relative not newcomer, but not so much of a fan of the whole superhero thing, even I was left a bit baffled by that. She was quite inconsistent. Yeah,
not to go into the DC Marvel comparison space, but Wonder Woman is the superhero, the female superhero for me. Great story, great backstory, and you can always rely on her knowing what her powers are.
And if she loses her whip, she's in trouble.
Yes. There will be so many lies. I'll be lying to her. The next thing I want to talk about was the Howl's Flying Castle.
Or Ray's flying office space.
This is ridiculous. These giant flying machines, I think, worked in the original Captain America movies, but now I just think it's a bit lazy storytelling. And one of the things I found most frustrating about it, this film I think is frustrating me in general, actually.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I was going to say, do you need a break? Do you need to take a few deep breaths?
Maybe some counselling after this. But when Howl's Moving Castle started to fall out of the sky, I think we were clocking on to 15 minutes before everything hit the ground. It was just insane. It just didn't make any sense, and it just speaks to how a lot of this movie was rushed through, and there wasn't many connections between scenes and different parts of the story. So yeah, again, that was a little bit frustrating, and I think that frustration also goes to the fact that she's such a beloved character, and I think they could have done better.
Well, was there anything else that made you cringe, or didn't make sense, or didn't add up for you?
The Red Guardian.
Really?
The Red Guardian, played by David Harbour. I'm sorry, David, if you're listening. I was going to get to that bit, but sorry, David, but for me, he's not reached the point of his career where I can see him as anyone else other than the sheriff from Stranger Things. Hellboy, when he was Gasper in Extraction, he is just the sheriff to me. So I'm sorry about that, mate, but yeah, I wasn't getting a Russian version of Captain America at all. Sorry about that. On to the Prison Break. Very wobbly CGI. Didn't really make sense. It seemed like they kind of stretched it out a little bit so they could get a bigger scene at play. It's not, for me, the worst superhero movie. It's certainly not in my top 10 or top 20, but I think it's fantastic that Scarlett Johansson was given this vehicle and that we're seeing more female leads in these kind of big budget movies. So for me, what am I going to give this movie? I'm going to give it 2 handfuls of popcorn out of 5, and I'm going to be throwing it at the screen right now. There's 1. And there's 2.
In a very empty cinema.
If anyone's wondering where I am, I'm currently at the Chinese Movie Theatre on Hollywood Boulevard, sitting my own, throwing popcorn at Black Widow.
Accompanied by some award-winning Foley artists who captured that. They captured the mood, not just the sound. You really felt you were there. I think we're going to have to play the sound effect again, but I would throw three handfuls of popcorn. I preferred it. I think I liked it more than you. I also liked it more than many movies of its ilk, and it kept me pleasantly distracted. Also...
Popcorn's coming. Keep talking.
Okay. The extra handful for me is because it was a movie that was not 3.5 hours long. It was, I think, pretty much on the 2 hour mark, which I thought was civilised. Well done. Thanks, Marvel.
So what we're saying is, if you get the opportunity to watch this movie at home, give it a watch. But if you're going to go to the cinema, maybe think twice about spending that money on a ticket.
Yeah, fair enough.
Brilliant. Well, that has been Popcorn Gremlins talking about Black Widow.
Give us a clue, Ryan.
Candyman. Why am I sounding so sexual? Candyman. Candyman. I won't say it another time because we all know what happens there. Great opening title track, by the way. Jesus, that still sticks with me.
I was going to say the chilling notes of Lord Philip Glass.
First of all, I hope Philip didn't feel too shattered when Candyman didn't do well at the box office. We all know it's become a cult classic now. So that, guys, we're recording this very late at night after having a quick screening of the film to refresh our minds. And I have no notes. So I'm going to go off the top of my mind and I'm going to try and quickly give you a quick synopsis of what this movie actually entails.
Let's see how this goes.
Yeah, so here goes. So the movie starts with our protagonist. She is a investigative journalist who is studying folklore in this unknown city, which I feel like is Chicago because they talk about the South Side a lot.
It is Chicago. She's an academic actually, but she is
an academic investigative journalist.
Yeah, okay.
Who weirdly, her kind of colleague who's helping her delve into the Candyman myth. Who also stumbles on really important clues, is the same actress, her name is Bernadette in the film, is the same actress who plays the same role in my other favourite movie, Silence of the Lambs. Yes.
And she's not the only one who's typecast because I pointed out that I recognised the professor boyfriend. She's dating a professor, that's naughty. He is the same...
Do you mean John Connor's stepfather from Terminator?
There you go.
Gotcha.
Yep. Same one. Both... It's no spoiler. Yeah, spoiler. Both of whom.
He's only done 2 movies.
Come to a very sticky end, so he's very good at doing that kind of corpse face. But I haven't seen him in anything else.
So, would you like me synopsis-wise? Should I work backwards based off what you just said? That would be a challenge. No notes. I'm working backwards.
Just fill in.
Okay, so where did I end off? So the protagonist is Helen.
Yeah.
It's an academic, investigative journalist who has the help from Clarice Starling's partner in Silence of the Lambs. Okay, so she's really interested and excited about this myth of Candyman, and all the kind of knowledge that she has is very secondhand and very academic. She comes across one of the cleaning ladies in the university where she works who tells her tales of the Candyman that's kind of going around killing people in the projects. She's like, the projects. Yeah, this sounds interesting. She goes down there, she finds out more. Anyway, long story long, it turns out that Candyman is really true. Death, death, death. He's alive. He's real. You say his name 5 times in the mirror and he will come and get you.
Wait, how many times have you said his name in this sentence?
I said it 4.
Okay, watch out.
And unbeknownst to her, she bears a resemblance to the Candyman's first love. For all those who haven't seen the film, Candyman becomes Candyman because he falls in love with a white woman. He is a black man in yesteryear America. Wasn't a great time period to be a black man. And he falls in love with her, and the local townsmen don't like this, so they capture him, tie him to a tree, cover him in honey, and set the bees on him. So he becomes this mythological Freddy Krueger, I'm going to get you type character. So Helen, the protagonist, looks very similar to this woman, so Candyman is instantly drawn to her. Over the course of the movie, he's trying to woo her by killing people, and more and more death ensues. By the end of the movie, she succumbs to his love and his, I don't know, what would you call it? His courting. His ways. His hook. His
bees.
And at the very last moment, she turns against him to save the child. We're almost at that bit. She dies in the end and then is resurrected as her own version of the Candyman. Maybe we call her the chocolate girl. I don't know.
We call her Christina.
That sounds problematic.
Aguilera.
Yeah.
In terms of spoilerific synopsis, I think that's early on in this series, but that takes the biscuit.
Oh, really?
It's always good to lead with, I can't believe she dies at the end.
Yeah, well, the movie's been around since 92. I'm sure it's come across most people. Again, on this podcast, we're just talking about movies and saying, here's what it is. We like it. Watch it if you like. Watch it if you don't. But always be a gremlin. Have something to say.
We are gremlins after all, so we will spoil things. That's in our nature. But we'll be more sensitive with the new releases. So this is based on a book by Clive Barker of Hellraiser fame and other things, but mostly Hellraiser is what he's known for, of course. And it was due to be set in Liverpool in England. And it did not have the kind of racial community history and backdrop element to it in the original story, which I think is what makes it resonate so much with audiences in 1992. But of course, to the unaware, there is a reimagining of the movie coming out later this year. We are in 2021.
Which is why I think it's the perfect time to talk about this. And obviously with Jordan Peele being at the helm of this movie, it's very exciting. The trailer looks amazing, but I think it's important for anyone to have a point of view on that upcoming movie. They need to have seen the original.
See what we did there. And if you're interested in stuff like this, I still haven't managed to find this legally in this country, but there's a really good documentary apparently called Horror Noir, which is exec produced by an academic called Tananarive Dew, who runs a UCLA course which is basically about Get Out. And I discovered her through the script notes on the published script version of Get Out, which someone who knows me very well bought me for a birthday present.
I don't need to study Get Out. I live Get Out.
Well, as Jordan Peele
I need to get out of here.
As Jordan Peele said in a famous tweet, Get Out is a documentary.
Right. Let's go into Candyman. So I've given the synopsis. Do you want to kick off with some notes?
Yeah, it was a nice walk down memory lane, as you say. What struck me was...
is that the time you got Candyman?
Yeah.
You got hooked?
Yeah.
That's how that scar is.
I was very young, very innocent. It happened very quickly. We
still loves mirrors.
Yeah, it's all the kind of tropes within it. I forgot how strong those visual elements of it are, and also how spare and pared back and kind of Spartan the scenics were. Walking around the projects, they're obviously quite bleak, run down, graffitied, but also there aren't very many people around. And even when she's back in her apartment, it feels quite sort of massive and she's quite lonely in it. And the backdrop to all this is that her boyfriend, Professor Mann, is not the most faithful guy around. And that contrasts quite nicely with the fact that Candyman wants to be with her forever and writes on the wall, "It was always you, Helen."
He literally wants to set her world on fire.
Very good. Boom, boom. And that's kind of one of the most surprising things is right in the middle of the film, or in the kind of final act of the film, she escapes from the lunatic asylum, as it's referred to in the movie, and goes back to the apartment and kind of finally realises it's over. And there's this really painful, awful breakup scene right in the middle of this horror movie, which is kind of a more recognisable horror of its own, I thought. Anyway, that's enough from me. What were your thoughts, Ryan? I see you've made some notes.
I see we're doing this now. So, I do have some notes. Yes, I do. So, I'm going to run through these in no particular order. First of all, I've said it once, I've said it twice, I've said it 3 times.
What, Candyman?
I love this movie.
Oh,
I think this movie is great. I mentioned earlier, right out the gate, the title music, just epic, that eerie piano sounds. Played it earlier, so good, love it. Really set the whole tone of the film. But going back to my childhood when I watched it when I was way too young, and this is becoming a theme in the podcast, the bit where the kid gets his you-know-what cut off really stuck with me, even to this day. Makes me quiver. That poor guy. But again, just like smacks you in the face and makes Candyman all the more scary because he has no boundaries. He will go after your mums, your dads, your kids, your dogs,
your babies.
So, and that's always the most scariest villain or character in a horror movie, isn't it? Someone who just doesn't care who they go after. On a slightly more serious note, I think on the whole, the movie speaks to that kind of systemic pain that lives in America when it comes to race and kind of the birth of the nation and all that kind of thing. I think it's a really interesting take on that, and just that point on race. The film flips the narrative of the blonde white woman being the heroine and the evil black guy being the villain, because by the end, with her kind of transmogrifying into her version of the Candyman, she's the one that's being hounded by the police. She's the one who's been seen as the criminal. She's the one who's been seen as the evil person. And then you start to feel sorry for Candyman. So I think that was really interesting. I wonder if that was deliberate. I haven't read the book, but that was a really interesting switch that I think was not really of its time. I think it was way ahead of its time in that way.
Do you think it sort of ends up being a love story in a way?
Yeah, with a lot of bees. Stinging, a very stingy love story.
In one scene, bees and poo. Can I interrupt with a quick claim to fame?
Yeah.
Once when I was doing work experience,
Why not?
When I was doing work experience, I got in a cab with an art director who'd done the poster for Candyman 2, and they'd had to freeze a whole load of bees to arrange around a head or something. And when they turned the lights on to shoot it, all the bees started to defrost and chase them around the studio. So it was kind of like a Candyman haunting happening.
Did anyone get Macaulay Culkin?
Everyone lived to tell the tale and to make more posters for more movies, so I guess it was a happy ending.
Can we just take a moment to throw some popcorn at my girl? I mean, it's a classic, that death scene. I mean, Macaulay Culkin didn't need to do anything else after that, and I don't think he did. But visually, one scene that has always stuck with me is the moment where Helen goes to visit a lady living in the projects, and she's wearing this like purple outfit, and she's got this Rottweiler, and she's really aggressive, and she's kind of on the backdrop of the graffiti, and that just speaks to like some of the art direction of the film. It was just really, really strong, really great with the soundtrack. It's just a really stunning piece of film.
That poor Rottweiler as well. Think The Godfather and the racehorse, and you're there. Tony Todd is thankfully is appearing in the new Candyman, which was unconfirmed for a while, and I think actually people interviewed him and he was kind of saying, well, I haven't had the call yet, but he is very much in the trailer, which is a good one, so check it out.
There you go. Charlie's in the know as always. Charlie aka Perez Hilton with all the Hollywood news. So the last thing I want to say about it is actually the last scene in the movie, the very last scene, the very last frame actually, where John Connor's stepdad has been murdered by
How's Wolfie?
Helen, Candy Woman incarnate. And when the camera pans back to his girlfriend knocking on the door and realising that he's dead and screaming, she's wearing a white cardigan holding a carving knife, and it's very, very, very similar to the opening of Scream with Drew Barrymore, and I wonder if someone took some influence on that, because it's a very specific look.
And although she wasn't making popcorn, she was making an enormous steak salad in the kitchen at the end. The size of that steak, they were never going to get through it.
90s portions. We were decadent then. We didn't talk about global warming, more cows the better, big salads.
There's lots of 90s smoking indoors as well, and casual daytime drinking in academic institutions. And by the way, weren't you surprised at the sheer number of leading and affluent academics who are all focused on urban legends? That's their sole field of specialism.
That reminds me of another favourite movie of mine, Time to Kill, aka one of Steven Seagal's best. Okay, guys, well, that's pretty much everything. On we could talk for hours on Candyman. You should watch it, give it a go. I think it's on Netflix. You definitely need to watch it if you're planning to watch the new movie. But right now, that's all from me.
And that's all from me.
Write in if you know where that little thing comes from.
See you on the back row.
See you on the back row.